All right, guys. Slumpbuster, episode 38. Promo code HAM on 3. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Slumpbuster. Quiet on the set, make sure my mic is on. There is Dre and Juju Dog diving towards the pylon. Go for two, so damn rude, recognize authority. Spitting tips for fantasy, no way you're outscoring me. Bold predictions with conviction every single day. Sports addiction, no restriction, kicking game like Pele. He's the greatest, what's the basis? Pick an athlete, let's debate this game. Outrageous trading places, sudden death, take 10 paces. Turn and shoot, boys the truth, Mamba mentality. Future greats take their place, dreams become reality. Low and outside, knocked it out the park. Your boy discovered fire like a rock with a spark. Refs acting like Neanderthals. Phantom flags, nothing calls. Heartbreak losses, tragic falls. Every week discuss it all. Settle in, listen up. Free your time like Andrew Luck. Show's about to start. I suggest you buckle up.
Promo code HAM.
Promo code HAM.
All right, guys, welcome to the Slumpbuster podcast. I'm your host, Juju Talk Sports. I'm joined, of course, by my co-host, Andre Wynn. On today's episode, we welcome in John Middlekauff, former NFL scout, host of the Haberman Middlekauff podcast, and host of the 3 and Out podcast brought to you by the Colin Cowherd Podcast Network. Thank you for coming on, John.
No problem. Thanks for having me, fellas. How's it going?
It's going great. How's it hanging in Well, are you directly in San Francisco?
No, I'm in the East Bay. I'm out in the suburbs, so it's actually like 80 degrees outside today. I was going to go for a little walk after I get off with you. So
are you allowed to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not touching anybody. A lot of people are out jogging around. I actually think it's, if you spend a lot of time on social media, everyone, I don't know where you guys are, like everyone's just cooped up. No, I mean, people are walking there. I mean, being respectful of social distancing and everything. We have not, I think a lot of people are putting San Francisco and the Bay Area kind of like it's because it's widely considered like New York of the West Coast. And it is kind of the setup, but we have not had the cases in California or even the Bay Area. Santa Clara, where the Niners play, actually has been hit pretty hard. But where I'm at, again, I mean, everyone's quarantining and social distancing, but this is an active community. It's hard to cage everyone up for, months on end.
Well, of course, but it did seem like you guys shut everything down pretty quick. So it kind of like kept everything from really going too far, I suppose.
I think I read an article in the LA Times that the corona has probably been here since like November or December, which is kind of crazy to think about. I know a lot of people that got really sick in January and February and just had no one even heard of the corona then, at least not on the mainstream. And I do think it's probably impacted the state of California just because our connections, China and LA and San Francisco, all the flights coming in and out and how fast things spread now, probably a lot crazier than people realized until now.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, on the bright side, hey, at least we still got the NFL draft. That's still going to be a thing. It's going to be much like this podcast through Zoom or FaceTime or whatever have you, but we at least have an NFL draft. But that said, we have some interesting kind of like stories we want to kind of like talk to you about. So first off, so you as a former scout, what would you be doing this time of like year, like leading up to the draft?
I would say Tuesday. So if the draft's next Thursday, if you were a road scout, had an area, you would usually head to your team, I would say probably by Saturday or Sunday. And then anything final, any information. You might have a light meeting on Monday. I know we always had like a team dinner on like Tuesday, where all the scouts would get, it'd be back when you could go out and eat dinner. You'd get a big table and, you'd get cocktails. And again, because you got another day and a half leading up to the draft. I talked to a buddy that's on a good team, and he's like, "We've been ready for weeks." I think it's a little different when you have high picks. Everyone's on edge. When you're drafting like the 20s, or even I'd say 15 and on, so much is out of your control. Once you get all the information, once you set your board, maybe 15 in this draft, you kind of have a decent idea. But I'd say anything 20 and on, so many curveballs happen. Like what if 3 guys go that no one's talking about being top 20 picks, then all of a sudden it pushes players down. So I think most of the teams in the playoffs, their front office is working just as their team goes, deep into January. So once they go to the Senior Bowl and the Combine, then they kind of link up and so much is out of your control unless you're drafting really high. And then I think you feel the pressure. When I was on the Eagles, we never had a high pick. until I guess that last year when Chip Kelly came in and it was Lane Johnson. I think we drafted like top 5, but it feels different, I think, when you're drafting top anywhere from 1 to 10, just because that player, in theory, now the irony is you can get a guy at 19 who's better than the guy at 8. But at the time, like on draft night, we're going to feel like most of the guys drafted really high are going to be the best players. That's just the reality of the draft, even though 2 years from now, that's just not going to be the case, right? We're going to have guys drafted in the second and third round. Some of the best players in the last several drafts, right? Think of all the star players that have come in the second and third round these last several years, from Alvin Kamara to Michael Thomas. I mean, you're talking the best players in the league at their position. You know, the Niners middle linebacker, Fred Warner, who was one of the better middle linebackers of the league last year, was a third-round pick. But on draft night, it wasn't that sexy. I love the draft, and it's awesome. But our reactions, you know, Sunday and Monday, once we have the whole draft, is all based on whether we like the guy. You never see a team on round 1, right? Whoever they pick with their first-round pick, whatever your pick is, they're always high-fiving and hugging, right, in the draft room. Everyone's really excited, and then we know half those players are not going to live up to their first-round billing.
What would you say, like, is the biggest thing that separates, like, good teams from bad teams on draft day? Is it just all about having that plan going in?
A huge element of it is your front office and your coaching staff, so working together. So, I mean, most guys, I'd say, in the top 3 rounds can play. I mean, are legitimate NFL players, like guys that have the talent. But a lot of it is based on what they're going to ask you to do, especially for, you could say quarterbacks too, what offense you're going to ask them to run. But a defensive lineman or a corner, there are major differences in certain schemes. And you see a guy that just sucks for a couple years, and then all of a sudden he goes to another team and he's good. It happens all the time. And I think scheme related, and that stuff out of the scouts' hands. So that's back to your question, why does some organizations do it better than others? I think the cohesion of the scouts and the coaches, like everyone speaks the same language. And when you have everyone speaks the same language, I think you limit your misses and you just limit your ability, like, because you're still, like any job, you're hiring a human. So you're going to hire a guy that, and here's the other thing. This is a job where even for the non-first round picks, if I draft a guy in the second round, I'm still probably giving him $1 million signing bonus or whatever. That's a lot of money. And you always ask, like, how will this guy react to money? You talk about this in scouting meetings, and you give your best answer, what you've talked to their coaches and their academic advisors and like how they've treated people that meant nothing in the program, right? Like the equipment manager or like, you know, the trainer's wife or just random people that he didn't need to be. And you can kind of gauge it, but you're still guessing. You know, some guys just don't. I wouldn't have. I'm much more mature with money at 35 than I would have been at 22. So there's just so much pressure on those guys too to perform. And then they got all this cash. It's not an easy situation. It's why it speaks to the guys that are able to handle it from the jump and just be high level guys. Like, it shows you they could probably do anything in society, you know, because that pressure, handling that pressure and not being unfazed by how much money you have. We all like to say that we could do it. If I handed you, you know, $10 million tomorrow, would you keep cranking out podcasts? Do you like to do it? I mean, because at the end of the day, football players or any high-level person that gets paid young in life and that maintains and sustains a high level of play, like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady's still going right now. He ain't doing it for the money. You know, he's doing it because he loves it. He's a junkie. I mean, he's a football junkie. And I'd say football more than basketball and baseball. You work so hard to not play that many games. So the studying, the meetings, you know, you just go to meetings after meetings, especially in the NFL. And I think a lot of these guys get used to it that are coming from big college programs because they approach it like the NFL. But there are still restrictions in college. Like, I'm sure teams push the envelope, but there are still only so many hours because they still got to go to class. You got to allow them to eat. You got to allow them to do, you know, go to academic advisors. Where in football, you're just in the building and you got to study. And then you're always changing your game plans for opponents. It can mentally wear you out as much as physically. I just know being in the building, being like, this is crazy, you know, and the coaches, and it's just an intense environment. And some guys thrive in that environment. Like, speaking of the Niners, like Richard Sherman, Joe Staley, they were made for it. Kyle Juszczyk, seems like Fred Warner, you know, the guy the Niners traded, Buckner. I mean, Buckner's born to play football and everything that comes along with it. That's why I think when you see Eric Armstead gets paid, you're like, you know, we hope he can just sustain this. But I know Buckner's got 4 years every day punching the clock and whatever it takes, you know, and then playing well. That's where it gets more complicated once you hit on picks. Like, who do you pay? It's just a complicated business because you're all these people. It's not like most businesses are just kind of black and white, right? It's just like, you do this, you get paid this much, and this is our service, this is our product. People change nonstop, and it's just injuries, your age. It's it's tough. And the thing about the draft is you're guessing about younger players, kind of projecting how much better can they get, and then factoring in all the stuff I talked about, like handling the pressure and the money.
That's why I couldn't honestly imagine being in the NBA, like trying to figure out the dynamics of high school scouting when they talk about taking away the 1-year eligibility, going to each and every high school trying to figure out 18-year-olds.
It makes sense why the NBA front offices like it the way it is. If they could choose, right, they would probably have multiple years. In football, you don't even worry about it. Like, you have great players in college right now that if this was the NBA, Trevor Lawrence, the kid Chase at LSU, like all these guys that, imagine throwing all those guys in the mix right now. It'd be crazy. But luckily, you just know, you're like, I don't even need to waste time on them right now. With great players, you're always asking about them. But, I mean, if you're going into LSU, you better know the running back, the quarterback, Justin Jefferson, Queen, Del Pitt, like all the guys that are coming out. Like, you got another 8 months to deal with Jamar Chase or whoever their next guy is. Where in basketball, it's like, God, any of these guys could declare at any moment, you know?
Guess the NCAA doesn't have to worry about the XFL poaching their 18-year-old players anymore, after all.
No, they don't.
As I rock this PJ Walker, Cam Phillips shirt, just actually got to see a game in there last weekend. So, just a fond farewell.
Well, he's a Teddy injury away from being a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Well, he does have his former coach not former coach, but former quarterback coach. No. Matt Rule coached him at Temple. That's right.
Yeah, he played for him at Temple, yeah.
All right, John. Well, like one of the big storylines going into the draft is Tua's health. So I've heard one report that says, okay, he's good to go. He's ready. That last video he put out, everything looks great. And then I read another report that's like the risk outweighs the reward. Do you agree with that? Because it seems like the reward is having a player that could be in your organization for about another 15 to 20 years rocking that quarterback. And the risk is in 3 to 4 years, you're drafting quarterback again. What do you think going into this draft?
Yeah, to me, the true risk is like he's not able to play really at all. Because if the reward is getting a franchise quarterback, you'd say it's probably worth the risk. Because he looks like, at least on the video that Chris Mortensen tweeted out, he's moving like he could play this year. It's what it looks like to the naked eye. To me, the doctors are much more, is the hip going to hold? Is he going to get a situation like you see it like Greg Oden's knees? Todd Gurley had degenerate knee. It usually happens with knees. We never hear about hips. Who's the running back out of Boise that played for the Eagles? Jay Ajayi. Remember, he was really good in college. And then people thought he was going to be like a late first, early second round pick. Well, he got red flagged for having a degenerate knee. And he still was good with the Dolphins, but he was just never going to get more than one contract. That's why his kind of flamed out. It wasn't because he couldn't play. So I think that's just the question. And like most of us, that fall football, or just I'd say any sport in general now, we're used to certain injuries, right? Broken legs, torn ACLs, torn shoulders, labrums, Tommy John. We just don't ever hear about hips. To me, if like 7-8 guys have had hip injuries in the last decade, we'd be like, well, this guy, and this guy came back from hip injuries, right? I think it would be much more, it'd be easy for you to argue if you like Tua. But I think right now it's like, I like Tua. You're like, well, is he going to be healthy? You're like, well, Bo Jackson wasn't healthy. That's the only guy that I can bring, like Bo Jackson, that had that severe of an injury. Now, I have read Bo, again, I was really young when he did it. I mean, I wasn't like, I wouldn't know it, but he played through it where Tua, like a couple more weeks, like it didn't, where he tried to keep working out or something, and I think Tua just ended. So I don't know if it's quite apples to apples, but I don't think it's a good thing. It definitely makes a lot of people nervous.
Well, 2 separate positions. Obviously, Bo had like his power running style.
Yeah.
Thing. I mean, another great example in sports in general, Tim Lincecum in the last few years had that degenerative hip injury as well. And we saw how he fell off the cliff pretty quick. All right. Well, with that said, if Tua is healthy, Tua versus Burrow, what are you feeling?
I would take Burrow just because we've seen more guys like Burrow have success in the NFL. I think, Tony Romo, Jimmy Garoppolo, I think their playing styles are kind of like that. They're kind of freelancers within the offense. None of them have great arms. I think Burrow's probably closer to Tony's size than Jimmy, but I think they all three kind of play together or have a similar playing style. The knock on Joe for me would just be his arm's not great. Mm-hmm. And if he's going to go to Cincinnati, you're playing Cincinnati, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland, like late in the year, it gets cold. And if you think about the quarterbacks that have had success, was Roethlisberger, huge arm, Flacco, huge arm, right? So Roethlisberger's a really good example. He was really good, but he also just had a big-time arm. And you're playing in these cold temperatures. And if you just look in that area, like being a West Coast guy, you don't quite realize it, but being in Philly, like we had Mike Vick, he could play in the cold. Eli Manning play in the cold. Brady play in the cold. Now they got Carson Wentz play in the cold. Like Donovan McNabb forever play in the cold. I think that does really, really matter. Cincinnati, when they were good with Carson Palmer, had a big arm. And I think that always kind of limited them with Dalton because people forget the Bengals had really, really good teams for a couple years with Marvin Lewis. Like, they were stacked. Like, they were legitimately probably like top 5 roster in the league. Dalton just, he just lacked a little. And Dalton wasn't bad, Dalton wasn't bad at all. The arm strength crushed him. Now, Burrow's better than Dalton, but this Bengals also is a hard place to, not an easy organization to play with.
You're not feeling Zach Taylor? You don't think that he's got the secret Sean McVay juice still in him?
Yeah, to me, to win in a place like Cincinnati, you got to have some pelts on the wall and just kind of be an old school kind of a-hole. And I think Marvin Lewis kind of had this old school, been in the league a while, was older. That was not an easy job when he took it over, but he could handle it. Like, to me, it's not a job for like a 38-year-old. It's a job for like a 48-year-old that's been coaching a while, that just kind of understands what he's getting into. I think Zach was, and I don't blame him, who can turn down millions of dollars to be a head coach, but if you're going to get a first-time head coaching job, you're going to go with the Bengals. Like, that's and be really young, especially in that, think against Harbaugh and Tomlin. That's not easy, man.
Not at all. All right, well, let's get into some quick Niners headlines, because you and obviously Guy Haberman, you run your podcast out of the Bay Area. You touch on both the Niners and Raiders normally. I mean, you cover all things, but let's talk about Aldon Smith real quick, because obviously you were down there during his prime years when he was really kicking ass with the Harbaugh years. What do you think of this contract he got with the Cowboys? Do you think it will work out, or do you think it's more likely to fail?
Yeah, I mean, when I was around him, just the ultimate freak, might have been the best looking guy, one of the top 5 looking guys in the league. I mean, he's huge, but he had he had a drinking problem, and maybe he had bigger problems than that. But I mean, the drinking problem is something he even talked about. I saw last week with Jay Glazer. It sounds like he's been sober now a year. Mike McCarthy was working out at Glazer's gym, I read a couple days ago, and he got to know Aldon, because Aldon was training there. So they got to build a little bit of a relationship. To me, that makes it a little different than just randomly sign the guy because he looks good. I was like, okay, that makes a little more sense to me. And then Jim Tom Sula, who had been his defensive line coach and pass rush guy with him when he was with the Niners, and even the head coach, they actually cut him Tom Sula's year in training camp because he got in trouble. But Jim knows him really, really well. So if he's ever going to turn it around, and listen, we all know, I mean, I think guys, girls, but I can only speak for guys, we all mature at different ages. I mean, I knew some people that were mature as hell at 16 years old. I mean, some people, and whether it's sobriety, whether it's just the way to treat people, whatever, there's always a point in time in our life, and sometimes it hits later. And when you're an athlete, think if Aldon had a normal life, he'd be fine, right? But with an athlete, your shelf life's short. It's now or never. But I think he's such an athletic freak. He's going to be probably, beside Tyron Smith, the best looking guy on the team. If he is healthy, I think he'll be a solid player. Maybe I'm too bullish on that, but I don't know if he'll ever be a star again, but it wouldn't shock me. I expect him to make the team if he's sober.
Let's hope. It's always good to have a good redemption story, come back, play of the year story. Now, the next one I have to touch on is Jimmy G. So I've been very vocal about my thoughts on Jimmy G's just makes sense as the quarterback for the Niners. But recently, mainstream media-wise, he's become one of the most polarizing quarterbacks in the league. I've seen Stephen A. hammer on him, multiple people hammer on him, all because of really that last throw at the end, that last 7 minutes of the Super Bowl. Do you think that Jimmy G should be the long-term star? Because in the offseason, we had the speculation on Brady, then Kirk Cousins' names keep floating around in the atmosphere. What do you think? Do you think that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality in the NFL, unless you're Mahomes or Russell Wilson or Rodgers, most guys are kind of year to year or 2 years to, I mean, you're on a relatively short leash. It's the NFL, but how are they upgrading Jimmy Garoppolo? Patrick Mahomes is not falling in their lap. Deshaun Watson, to me, he's clearly, of the guys under 30, he's not Mahomes, he's not Deshaun, but he's right there in the mix with everyone else. I'd rather have him than Dak. Yeah, I'd rather have him than Dak. I'd rather have him than Kirk Cousins, and look at Drew Brees, who's 40 years old. He's about to be out of the league, so you got a better quarterback situation than him. You would say Matt Ryan. I mean, Matt Ryan might have been a little more statistically successful with Kyle, but they both got to the Super Bowl. You can win with Jimmy. Now, I think at the time, Matt could do more, but Matt was older. Matt had been playing a lot longer. Where I'm not going to be too hard on Jimmy, and I like Jimmy as a player, he hasn't played that much. This was his first year being a full-time starter. And I'm also, maybe I have a softer spot for guys that make mistakes. I would rather have guys that, I don't want Jameis Winston, but I like a guy that'll push the envelope a little. Now, Jimmy, I mean, there'll be certain games you're like, whoa, Jimmy, let's calm down, buddy. But for the most part, I think Jimmy, he had maybe the best game of the season of anyone, that Saints game, the way he played at Seattle, the game against LA. Their defense, while it turned back into a great defense in the playoffs, after about week 8 or 9, once guys started getting hurt, they became an offensive team, and they had to score, 30 plus, and that Saints game, 48 points. And Jimmy was a huge, huge reason why they were to be able. And the other thing at quarterback, you have to resonate with your teammates, and clearly the locker room freaking loves him. And he understands what it's like to be a teammate because he had a front row seat for Brady, who's probably one of the most beloved. Like I've never heard one teammate say one bad thing about Brady. Offense, defense, kickers, they love him. And to me, at quarterback, that does matter a lot. You go, well, if Rodgers was more beloved, would maybe they get over the hump? Like, there's just more like true love. Even Russell Wilson, it feels like, do they totally love him? He's a little like Mahomes. I'll give Mahomes, like those guys love Mahomes. Those guys love Deshaun Watson. To me, that's something I value a lot in a quarterback. Like once you're a good player, I mean, you got to be good enough for that to matter. But when your teammates really like you and they'll go to war for you, to me, that means a lot.
So, John, moving on to the other team across the Bay or in the Bay Area, right, is the Raiders, but they actually happen to be moving out of the Bay Area. We know they're going to Vegas. Do you guys still plan to cover them? I know you're a Bay Area sort of podcast. Are you still going to keep tabs on the Raiders? And how do you think they're going to do in Vegas this year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm entertained by them. And as long as you got Mayock and Gruden and they're a big national story, and if you win, I'll talk about you. I think for them to be different than last year, 6, 7, 8 wins, that range, instead of going to 9, 10 and getting into the playoffs, they're going to need to nail some draft picks. And with that 12th and 19th pick to get a couple like Pro Bowl level guys, whether that's a sweet linebacker and a receiver, 2 sweet wide receivers, like Pro Bowl guys. Because I'd say the one thing they missed last year, they got a lot of solid players, right? They got just a bunch of NFL players at a lot of positions. They don't have enough like Tyreek Hill's, Joey Bosa's, Nick Bosa's, just blue chip guys. I'm trying to think of like a Luke Kuechly, just a guy that a Pro Bowl. You just go Pro Bowl. And this guy in a big game, when you're playing the Broncos, when you're playing the Chiefs, and you're 6-6 late in the season, and it's going to be the difference of making the playoffs or not. You have a much blue chip guy that can just make a play. And last year, once Jacobs kind of got hurt, you can't depend on a running back that much, especially a guy that's that physical. Because unlike like Marshawn Lynch, how many guys can be running over guys every game and just maintain? You're going to get hurt. And Jacobs, for example, at Alabama never had to really carry the load. So I bet last year by about week 8, he's like, geez Louise, I'm hurting, and that's why it's so important to me for them to nail a receiver in this draft. So you can have a sweet receiver, a sweet tight end, and a sweet running back. And then your offense, because there were times last year where it's like, God, if they could just score instead of 20 points, if they could get to that like 27, 28 mark, they probably win 9 games. But they struggled to score in a couple games because they just didn't have enough firepower. You could argue, go take a receiver at 12, take a wide receiver at 19, right? And just put all your chips in the middle of the table and just be like, we got CeeDee Lamb, we got Justin Jefferson, we got Waller, we got Jacobs, we got Renfro, Tyrell Williams. We got some good offensive linemen. We're going to just try to score 30 points a game. And our defense should just be a little bit better. We signed a bunch of guys, but we're going to try to light up the scoreboard because you're chasing the Chiefs. Depending on who the Chargers land, they got dudes everywhere on offense, right? The Broncos look like they're going to be improved. I mean, they played well toward the end of the season, and they got a good roster. So I think the division is really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and from everything that we've heard is this is a good draft for wide receivers. So if there is a time to take 2 of them, in the first round or first and second round.
Even if it's a first and a third round or whatever, but just maybe double down because that would be a position that, I mean, you got an offensive coach, you're paying him $10 million a year. So you might as well put all your chips in the middle of the table.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do want to be respectful of your time. Real quick, the Raiders do have, sort of a quarterback controversy themselves, right? We talked about San Francisco's. Do you think Derek Carr or Marcus Mariota is going to get the starting job?
I think Carr's the starter for sure. I mean, no OTAs. We'll see what happens with training camp, but Derek knows the offense. And Derek's just a better player right now. Now, if the Raiders are struggling, right, if they get off to a slow start, because whoever they draft, the expectations, I think a lot of people are going to be like, can the Raiders be like the 6 or 7 seed, right? If they nail a couple draft picks, at least it looks like it, that if you get off to a slow start, you never know. Or, Derek, he's been healthy, I guess, the last year. 2 years ago, he missed the game, and the dude from the old Florida State quarterback, can't remember his name, filled in. But, Mariota, look what happened to Mariota last year. Mariota was the starter, and then all of a sudden got kind of Wally pipped by the guy that no one thought Ryan Tannehill was going to play. And now Ryan Tannehill's got $65 million. The NFL, unless it's like Mahomes, you can never say never you'd say like Mahomes, Watson, Russell Wilson, Rodgers, Brady, Wentz. There is a small group that is just in stone. Hell, Cousins got a contract extension. Let's say the Vikings draft Jordan Love this year. You could say, like, what if the Vikings just started slow, Now, they just paid Cousins a lot of money, so they probably wouldn't.
We actually have a measurement on this show. Like, whenever a contract's bad or anything, we just call it a Kirk Cousins,
Yeah.
Hey, like, what do you think that's worth? I don't know. Kirk Cousins, $84 million guaranteed.
I mean, Cousins, when the dust settles, Cousins is going to have NBA money.
It's true. Okay, John, last question before you head out of here. And we ask all our guests this. Favorite all-time sports movie? Go.
I would probably say the easy answer would be Rudy, but my personal favorite is Blue Chips. I love Nick Nolte. I'm a big Shaq guy. I love everything about how he sold out and he started giving dudes tractors and Shaq wouldn't take any money. One of my favorite movie scenes ever is when he goes in the bayou and they go to that little gym and it's like wood rims and it's Shaq in like 93 who's blocking dudes and hitting alley-oops. And Shaq's just that scene. It's one of my favorite movie scenes of all. And Nick Nolte's just jaw hits the floor and Neon Boudreaux. And then he couldn't even pass the SAT because he couldn't spell his name right. I love Blue Chips.
I'll admit, I got to check it out myself. We had a solid run there for any given Sunday. So
yeah,
breaking it up, Blue Chips. That's a new one on our radar. All right,
check
John,
it out. It's good.
People know where to find you at John Middlekauff on IG and Twitter, correct? Obviously, the 3 and Out Pod, Haberman and Middlekauff, all great places to find you. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate having you and hope to have you again sometime.
Yeah, thanks, fellas. Have a good day.
Peace.
Thanks.
Have a great one. All right, guys. Well, that was John Middlekauff. Like I said, he is, well, as you probably overheard, a great source of information for all things football, all things NFL. Him and his co-hosts on the other show, they do a great job. So highly recommend checking it out if you're trying to get your sports fix. They're doing a lot of cool stuff like reviewing old games, which I think is fantastic because, we're just trying to fill that void right now that we're missing sports. What did you learn from that interview, Dre?
Yeah, I learned what it's sort of like to be a scout and to be in a scout's mind, right? Is there's so many things that are going on, even factoring in maturity, right? And when they get that money, it's more than just, hey, this guy is a fantastic player, right? This guy, he knows how to run his routes and he runs, a 4.40 or something like that. It's how is he going to act when we pay him first rounder money or second rounder money? And so those are all really interesting insights, just being somebody that's been in the business, they understand what's going on, being able to hear that. And I'm going to be thinking about that now as the NFL draft comes, right? It's going to be like the only thing showing for 3 days. So I'm going to be like, was that guy worth the money, right? And I'm sure we're going to see some of these stories where it's like this guy ended up getting paid, he went in the first round, and now he's a bust, right? Versus some of these guys that are underpaid, like Dak Prescott, for instance, probably really underpaid for the value that he brings to the Cowboys. So I'm going to be looking for that as well as who's overvalued, who's undervalued. And, as we go into next season, was that person worth sort of the money and the round that they went in?
All right, so welcoming on to the podcast. He's been just sitting on the bench, taking out some warm-up swings, but he's up to bat now. Our own C-Money. Welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up, guys?
All right, so Christian is here because we are going to be breaking down the movie 42. Jackie Robinson Day is taking place. Well, depending on when you're listening to this, it's going to be taking place this Wednesday, the 15th. But you can celebrate Jackie Robinson any day of the week. The guy was an icon, a legend, and he broke big ground when it came to not only baseball, but the sporting landscape in general. So, guys, let's get into this review. But I'm going to start it off with a quote that I pulled from the movie directly from the intro here. Baseball was proof positive that democracy was real. A baseball box score, after all, is a democratic thing. It doesn't say how big you are or what religion you follow. It does not follow how you voted or the color of your skin. It simply states what kind of ball player you were on any particular day. Guys, 42, how much do you love it?
Oh, I really liked it. This was the first time I saw it. I really liked it. I love the acting. Harrison Ford was great. Chadwick Boseman was great. It was really good. There's quite a bit of a few familiar faces in the film. For example, Alan Tudyk, he plays Ben Chapman. He was the racist Phillies coach. The racist Phillies manager. And that part, to me, was really weird watching that part because Alan Tudyk came out in a previous episode of the Slumpbuster, and that was when we reviewed Dodgeball. So as soon as I saw Alan Tudyk, I was like, oh God, Steve the Pirate is saying the N-word right now. I was like, what is this? But first time I seen it, I really liked it. What I really liked about the film was how the film went to the beginning of Jackie Robinson, how he was playing in the African American League because, back then things were segregated. And I just like the part that Harrison Ford, which is Ricky decides, you know what, I feel like at first he saw that there was more money in getting African-American baseball fans. And at the beginning of the film, you get the feeling that he only wants an African-American player so that he could get more money in the end. He could get more audience, more people tuning into baseball. But overall, as soon as he sees Jackie Robinson doing amazing and sees how the landscape is changing, he changes too. Like, it just completely switches his mind. What did you guys like about the film?
I agree with you. I thought the film was a fantastic movie. I know I've said it on the podcast before, I'm not the biggest baseball fan. I'll definitely watch it if there's a good game or, if some of the LA teams are playing, the West Coast teams are playing. But what I really like is, one, they sort of got into the baseball. You got to see a lot of, what goes on behind the scenes and, the dugout, what goes on behind the scenes in like actual baseball when you're going up to the plate, up to bat and all of that stuff. But I liked how realistic they were with the time frame, right? As you have people actually saying the N-word, right? And we're talking hard on the movie, and it's, coming from a white guy towards a black guy. And it's like, it sort of makes your skin crawl, like, oh man, like don't say that, that's the one thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Say, right? But it's how real it is. And then there's also the scenes where there's a guy literally being threatened with his life, right? Like he's receiving these death threats, and you see him pull out this stack of letters. Sorry, I should say the owner, right, pulls out a stack of letters. So this is Ricky, pulls out all these letters, and they're in huge manila folders of death threats that this black athlete was receiving, not because he blew a game, not because he got caught cheating, not, any of that stuff. Simply just because he was black playing in a white league, he was getting death threats. People were threatening him, his wife, his children. So it's really impactful, really powerful. And I think it's just a good movie for anybody to see. Just like, I think it helps you become a better human being watching that and realizing like, oh man, like all this stuff that these people went through in history and throughout history, it definitely gives, humbles you and makes you approach life sort of in a different way.
Yeah, you definitely heard as many hard R's as you would in any Quentin Tarantino movie. But, they had to do it. They had to be realistic to the time period. You guys are right with that one. It's always like a little weird when in a movie you do see like someone who's you look at as someone clearly not racist, like Steve the Pirate, dropping some hard N-bombs in there. You do have to kind of like, wait, he did, huh? And then you feel a little different for the next like 10 seconds after that one. But no, it was great at doing like all the realistic stuff that this guy had to deal with during the time frame. The death threats that Andre mentioned, those are real. One thing that I'm glad that they kind of touched on too, because we always think about how would the opposing teams react? How would the reporters react? How would the crowds react? We kind of have a feeling of how that's going to happen. But what they hit on was how was his teammates going to react? When you first like look at how like Pee Wee Reese and all them had to like approach it, when you had the guys at spring training getting together, signing a petition to not play with him. And then their manager at the time, Leo DeRosa, has to like lay down the law and say, hey guys, you're playing with him regardless, or you're not playing. That's as simple as it is. You're not getting a paycheck if you don't go out there and perform. We're all here to play baseball. And I think that was one of the guiding principles behind why Jackie Robinson eventually got accepted into the sport and eventually was able to dominate like he did, because he was just a great talent. And you look at his lifetime batting average down there, you look at just everything he was doing, his speed, regardless if you think like that one reporter in the booth that he had a excess like heel bone or whatever. It's like that Bill Burr skit we watched, that Bill Burr skit I had you react to.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it did everything really well. I think that those are some of the bigger moments in the entire movie. And of course, if you want to talk about favorite movie moments right now, the main one, Pee Wee Reese going to him at first base in front of basically his hometown fans out there in Cincinnati, as he's originally a Kentucky-born resident, and standing next to him and basically saying, hey, one day everyone's going to wear 42. That way none of them can distinguish between us. And that's what we're seeing today. 42 is the only number that's been retired throughout all baseball, aside from the few years that Mariano Rivera, also a Hall of Famer, was able to wear it. And then 42 every year in April, which is going to be sad that we won't see due to the current situation, but players all across the league wear 42. And I think it's one of the greatest traditions in sports.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of powerful scenes in this film too. Like the one part that like hit me was the part where Ricky is just in his office and his assistant Harold comes in and he's like furious, and he says he was pretty much going on a rant about like, how could people treat him this way? How could people just call him the N-word? How could they disrespect him? And then Ricky says, well, I remember when I brought this up, you were against it. So what happened? And he says, the assistant says, well, I don't know. And then Ricky says, yeah, you learn sympathy. And then he tells them about the Greek words of sympathy, and then he mentions Philadelphia as a Greek word of brotherly love. That part was just awesome, because like not only was he changing the league, but he was changing the team and the owners and the assistants. He was changing everything just by the way he was playing and just by how brave he was too.
Yeah, and another scene that was really impactful to me, similar to what you're saying, C-Money, is when Ricky tells him, like, hey, I saw a little white boy rubbing his hands with dirt just like you do, Jackie, right? And wearing a number 42 jersey. And at that time, it was unheard of, right? Is you don't have white people wishing that they were a black person, right? Like, because nobody would have wanted that. And so that just shows you how transformative and how transcendent Jackie Robinson was. Not only is he a sports icon, right, and definitely a Hall of Famer. I mean, he won Rookie of the Year his first year there. They ended up winning a World Series in 55. But as a civil rights sort of image of what the civil rights movement was all about, right, as that sort of, hey, I'm going to break ground and show you, right, that we're all the same. And I'm going to take, the punishment that these fans give me and the other players, right, that would hit them with balls and all of that stuff, and say, hey, I'm going to, not fight back. I'm going to, keep my temper in check just so I can be an icon to not just the black community, but everybody around the world.
For the record, this is the only time ever that I will celebrate the Dodgers. But that, you got to give it to Branch Rickey, his decision to bring Jackie Robinson into his organization when, no one was going to do it. No one was willing to be the first person to stick their neck out and sign a black ball player. And regardless if necessarily he was doing it for the right reasons, because he did mention, hey, this isn't a black or white issue. This is a green issue. Money's green. Doesn't matter where it's coming from. That was, I believe, the quote from the movie. It got the job done. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily matter the motives for why something good happens, but you can find the silver lining later on after it happens. And without Jackie Robinson, some of these other guys wouldn't even get a chance. And like I said, it's not just a baseball thing. This goes for every other sport that was scared to take that first step, to jump into the deep end, because the backlash that you would face at the time. I mean, you saw it pictured in the movie, and I'm sure for everything we saw in the movie, he probably was honestly getting it 10 times worse in real life, if we're being real.
Oh, yeah. Dude, imagine the death threats that Jackie Robinson was getting back in the day. And back in the day, people were ruthless. Not too long before this, it was, let's see, because this movie happened in the 40s, right?
Yeah, so I mean, it does that real quick though. It does bring me one of the funnier moments though, where he's getting shoved into the car by the assistant or the reporter. Sorry,
I was about to mention this part too. I thought this part was hilarious also.
And he was like, "What's the reason? What's this?" So he's like, "Oh, you're getting death threats." It's like, "Oh, I thought it was getting cut from the team." They'd all just laugh about it.
That part was hilarious. What I liked that Chadwick Boseman showed in the film. If you don't know who that is, he's Black Panther.
Black Panther. He's T'Challa, man.
What I liked that he showed about Jackie Robinson was Jackie Robinson, from what I could tell, was the type that you could get to him, but he will prove you wrong and he will make you look dumb. Like the scene where the pitcher kept trying to get him on a strike and it wasn't working, and he just pretty much outmaneuvered the pitcher because he just kept getting balls, and then he kept itching closer and closer through the bases. That scene was just so funny. And then of course the pitcher drops the ball and it's an instant ball, so he just walks and scores without even hitting the ball. That part was just so good, how he just outmaneuvered the pitcher. All right, guys, so what would you all rate this film?
Well, I guess, it's tough because I try not to give home runs to everything, because I feel if you give a home run to everything, then you're basically saying it's a perfect movie. They could do nothing right after that. But this one I have to cave. It's a home run because I think it's an important movie. It's a movie that needed to be out there because Jackie Robinson's memory, it's just one of those things that we just have to keep living on. We got to keep that memory alive. So I'm happy that they put it out there. I'm happy that Chadwick Boseman did such a great performance. Even Harrison Ford did a great job.
Yeah.
His wife did a fantastic job. So yeah, it's a home run. Knocked out of the park.
Yep, I agree. I think they knocked it out of the park. I do have little gripes with the movie, right, is like some of the child actors that they had, like Ed Charles, the child actor that portrayed Ed Charles. I was like, the acting isn't that great, but what can you expect from childhood actors? And so with that, I'm not going to dock the movie too much. Like Juju said, it's an incredibly important film. If you haven't seen it, you need to go see it. We're all stuck in quarantine, so it'll give you something to do, but it's a home run for me.
Yeah, it's a home run for me. Unfortunately, I feel like I've given too many home runs, but this one's definitely the most important. To me, this film is a lot like Glory Road. I love Glory Road. And in my last review, I gave that one a home run. So I'm going to give it a home run. And Juju, I have to talk to you about something. We have to start reviewing crappy movies, crappy sports movies.
We got to, because we just keep reviewing the best. We're going to run out of good movies here pretty soon. But,
Exactly.
Come on, we have like 50 years of movies, of sports movies out there. I'm sure we could pull out some good ones. So if you want to keep up with our latest Get Your Popcorn series, go check it out on our YouTube channel. Like C Money said, we have Glory Road up there. We have movies like Dodgeball, Major League, Sandlot, all that good stuff. Go ahead and check that out on our YouTube channel. Subscribe for that. All right, guys. Well, getting back into the main show here, the main Slumpbuster podcast, I do want to put some thoughts and prayers out there because we have had a week of loss in the sporting world. The first one I want to recognize there is going to be Karl Anthony Towns' mother. She was actually a victim of COVID-19. Now, I know early on, when COVID came out, we at the Slumpbuster, and I think a lot of people around the world didn't really necessarily take it that seriously. But when you actually see people dying, and she was a fairly young woman, you do have to kind of really feel for that family out there. So Karl Anthony Towns, I hope you're doing okay. The next one we want to touch on is going to be Hank Steinbrenner, so the owner of the Yankees. He passed away today. He was in his 60s. It was reportedly not a COVID death, but still, nonetheless, 60s are too young to die, in my opinion. That expected age keeps going up, so way too soon for him. I was still around when his dad, George Steinbrenner, passed away, and that was tough on the Yankees organization. I'm sure this one is going to be tough. I mean, New York is already going through some hard times, so obviously having a beloved owner pass away is not exactly befitting. There's was a passing away in the NHL world as well, and I just want to apologize. I don't have the player's name up right away, but I do want to touch on the passing of him because he was a young guy. He died of a brain bleed. Colby Cave, 25 years old. I'm just sitting here at 26. This is kind of like what I say, you got to live each day to your fullest. 25. Colby Cave, memories out to you, man. And let's see, Tavares Jackson, the former quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks, was with a couple other franchises besides them. He passed away. He was a victim of a motorcycle incident. So again, guys, all young people by today's standards, just go out there, stay safe, be with your family, enjoy these times because you're not guaranteed tomorrow. Guys, do you have any thoughts or things you want to add on to that?
I just want to say, rest in peace to everybody that's been affected, no matter what the cause of death was or what the situation was. I do also find it sort of, I guess, humbling and, a good thing that all of these leagues decided to shut down, right? And everybody was sort of standing behind the WWE and the UFC because they wanted to keep events going. No, we got to keep going. And I appreciate that, right? I appreciate them wanting to put shows on for their fans. I appreciate them wanting to still host these events for the athletes. But at the end of the day, when you have a death, especially like a Karl Anthony Towns' mother, right, who passes away from COVID-19, sort of just puts things into perspective. And it's like, whoa, okay, we really do need to take a step back. And, these guys are athletes. They're humans too. They could be subject to this disease. And so I think, I commend the NBA, MLB, all of the sports leagues, right, that have said, hey, look, this really is a life or death situation. We're not going to put our athletes, we're not going to put our fans through that. But again, rest in peace to everybody. And I hope all the families are doing well.
Yeah, rest in peace to everybody. And everybody, of course, stay safe. Please watch your health. definitely please social distance as much as you can. Wear a mask. Please wash your hands. This really is a crazy time that we're living in. I would have never thought that this would happen here in 2020, and it's crazy. It's nuts out there. But everybody, please stay safe. And yeah.
All right, guys. So, I mean, it's been a kind of light week. So we had that great interview with John. We reviewed 42. You guys have anything else you want to touch on before we head on out?
Do you want to talk about NASCAR?
And
after reviewing 42?
after reviewing 42, probably not ideal timing. See, when they said it in the movie, it was kind of okay just because they were measuring it by the 40 standards. I don't have the guy's name pulled up here, but this is just a reminder that watch what you say, because you never know. Well, for starters, you don't want to offend other people just to be a dick. But
Yeah.
secondly,
Kyle Larson.
yeah. Secondly, you're getting recorded, and the guy was on what
He was on Twitch.
he was on a Twitch stream. It's like you do know. Well, hopefully you understand that other people are viewing your Twitch stream. So
Yeah.
I
and it was a NASCAR sponsored Twitch stream too, so just makes it way worse.
I'm not going to hold it against the whole sport of NASCAR. Just to be clear, as far as I know, this is one guy who's an idiot.
Yep.
Let it be at that. He'll probably apologize here soon. But much like Michael Richards, Kramer, it's a long road to redemption after you've dropped a hard R on live television or live internet or whatever you're dropping it. Just don't drop it. Just don't say it.
Nope.
If your skin pigmentation doesn't reach a certain standard, it's probably not in your best interest.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain people you should probably stay away from all versions of the word, but especially hard R is where you should always draw that line. I don't care what your skin color is. Draw that line, hard R, you don't say it.
Even like soft R, like, hey, all things considered, I'm friends with both you guys. I have not earned that right. I respect that right. I have not earned that standard, and I will stick clear of saying it. I won't even add the the cuh, whatever it be. But especially hard R, that is not happening.
I know. Can I just go on a quick rant real quick on
yes, please.
Because there seems to be a lot of people that don't understand this. Like all the time I always hear, and people come up to me and maybe they truly are just curious and they're wondering, or they're just purposely trying to get on my nerves. And they're like, well, how come, black people can say that word, but like white people can't say that word? And I'm like, think of it this way, right? So think about your family. All of our families, we've got something messed up, right? Like your dad might be a drug dealer. Your mom might, be sleeping with a bunch of other dudes. Your, sister might be a dropout of high school. Your brother might, be a screw up. And you can say as much crap as you want about your own family. And you can say, oh, I hate my dad. He's an idiot. I hate my brother. I hate my cousin, whatever. That's fine because you're in the family. But if somebody random comes up to you and is like, oh, your family is full of druggies and, they're screw-ups and a-holes, I guarantee you're probably going to punch them in the face. Exact same thing, right? When it comes to the N-word, are you a part of the family? No? You probably shouldn't say it.
So what you're saying is I should probably not reach out to Kyle Larson and have him on the next episode of this podcast.
I would say it's probably not in our best interest, And the family thing, I will say this goes for everything, right? Like, so think about the LGBTQ community. They're part of the family. They're part of their family. They can say offensive things to other LGBTQ people. If I start saying certain words on this podcast, I guarantee I'm going to get a whole lot of hate, right? So Kyle Larson.
You're going to be canceled pretty much.
Exactly. Like, just think of it that way. Are you a part of the family? If you are, you can say it. If you're not a part of the family, don't say it.
See, I always walk that fine line as a very whitewashed Latino. Like, what's my threshold? What can I go at here? Do I have that privilege because I do reach a certain standard? I do have that Martinez at the end there, but I'm still scared to use it in the wrong settings.
I know. Maybe when you get a tan, Juju, when you're chilling on the beach for a little bit and your skin gets extra
How am I going to get a tan, Andre? We can't go outside.
Backyard tanning.
Backyard tanning. Do I just have to get like, in the old movies, that reflective kind of thing, just kind of
Yeah, exactly.
Toast up a little bit. I mean, yeah, it's just, God, just don't say it. Just do yourself a favor. If you're thinking about saying it, don't. All right, guys. Well, I guess let's close it out then strong here. So at Slumpbuster Podcast on IG, at Slumpbuster Pod on Twitter. Find us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, the Google Play Store, iTunes, all the places you listen to your podcast. We'll be back again here later this week. We have another great episode planned out. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay safe, healthy, and happy. We'll see you next time.